Hey watchers, welcome back to the channel. Today it is, yes, Alpha versus Omega, the battle to the death that I have been wanting to do ever since I found out that Graham, my mate, got a Moonwatch. So thank you again, Graham, for providing the Moonwatch for review and comparison, as well as the Alpha chronograph here on the left for this battle to the death here. So guys, what I have here is a Chinese very heavy homage watch versus the original legendary Moonwatch nonetheless here. So they both are in 316L steel, so just covering the similarities, right? They both have screw-in case backs. Let me just show you, the case backs briefly. This one is a display case back, and they have nominal 50-meter water ratings here, tachymeter bezels, and of course the Alpha has pretty much just copied the Omega that you see here on the right. Steel bracelets, right? Both movements are 21,600 beat per hour, manual winding, non-hacking, no date chronograph movements. Is the resemblance just skin deep, or does it go deeper than that? Is there more substance to it? So, the Alpha Moonwatch on the left, or should I say the Alpha mechanical chronograph 42mm, is something I reviewed quite a long time ago. The MSRP on this is 185 USD roughly. This is what it is able to be procured for, versus on the right here we have none other than the Speedmaster professional Moonwatch 42mm mechanical chronograph. This one, MSRP 5,250. The actual price that you're going to be able to get this for is roughly 25 times the price of the watch on the left here. So, it's a very massive difference here. Let's get into the comparison. So, straight up, as you can see on the picture here, I've changed up my 10 categories here. Right, I think this will better allow me to compare perhaps some facets which are more important and probably should weigh a bit more. So case and bezel, dial and crystal and bracelet are different things that I haven't included before, but these are mainly talking about the functional purpose and design of these facets, which I think probably should weigh more in a comparison. All the others I've kind of included in different iterations in my previous comparisons I have taken inspiration from TGV Urban Gentry channel, admittedly. Okay, so let's just get into this comparison. I'm not actually going to read out the scores here because I think clearly this is a foregone conclusion. I'm just going to talk through what are the things that you are going to note when you talk about a watch that is more than 25 times the price of the one on the left, the legend versus the pretender, the homage. Okay, so caliber first up. The Alpha, is no slouch, right? This one, if you've seen my video before, is actually the Seagull ST1903 movement, right? So it is a 21,600 beat per hour movement. It does have 20 joules versus the 18 joules of the Omega 1861 caliber, right? That's the Omega caliber of the watch on the right here, right? 42 hours versus 48 hours for the Omega. And this is actually a column wheel. You can see the column wheel just over on the right of screen here, right? Versus the Omega, which is now really a cam lever chronograph. And you can argue to the cows come home, but I think it's non-controversial to say that column wheels do take a higher degree of precision to make. So it's technically harder to make a column wheel chronograph, and this one actually does have that in the Seagull movement. So, caliber wise, I think I do have to give the caliber mark to the Omega because, it is really based on the original caliber, which is actually procured through Breguet these days, right? Previously it was Lemania, but it's actually through Breguet. It's been so strong, so much history in that, and of course the original calibers in the watches withstood NASA testing, as does this, I think. So it is a tough, reliable caliber, very accurately regulated. I do have to give it to the 1861, but this is no slouch. This is a very good I think column wheel chronograph. It's very, very fair, and for under $200 you can obtain this. I think it's pretty fantastic and I'm giving it 8 out of 10, you know, for that seagull caliber there. So 9 out of 10 for Omega. That's one of the closest ones you're going to see in terms of the category comparisons here. All right, case and bezel. All right, Omega, right, design-wise, I have to give it 10 out of 10 because this is so iconic. It is really, it's really quite beautiful, right? I mean, you know, those no lugs, the way it sits, the fact that it's not that thick for the chronograph that it is, right? Just look at the design, the you know, asymmetric sides here. You know, this side has more metal on it, and then that bezel, which is, you know, look at that low sitting, and then it allows the glass to go on top. That tachymeter. I mean, this is just iconic stuff, and I think in terms of design, because it is so classic, I can't find myself giving it any less than a perfect score. This one, obviously, is a copy, but you know, it's unrefined. You know, the angles are not the same. I'll just put it side by side here. Okay, right. The profile is very different, right? The way they've copied it, they kind of failed to copy the best bits, really. I think, you know, very different type of profile, particularly the end link protrusion. You can see it protrudes a lot more than the Amiga, such that if you measure from there to there, it is actually 58 millimeters, very, very large, whereas the Amiga is about 5 millimeters shorter. That's really how it should sit. Ideally, I think if you had a choice, this one sits too high on the wrist because of that, and too wide on the wrist. So it falls down on the case design here, I think, you know, no doubt about it. And, you know, yes, the bezel is iconic copy, but it doesn't sit quite as low. It's really, you know, they failed to kind of emulate the best bits here. So I'm going to give it a much lower mark here. All right, Omega is iconic silhouette, and Alpha tried to copy it, but they kind of fell down. Okay, next up. All right, dial and crystal. Right, this one, this glass, the Hesalite acrylic, is, you know, another very well-known thing, right? The popular Hesalite crystal. Right, I'm not going to say too much more about it. Take a look at my very long review if you want to hear more details about this. The dial itself, right, is the, you know, very, very famous Omega Doll. Right, just take a look at the beauty, right? So many watches have tried to copy this, and the balance, the clarity, even though everything is printed, there's zero applied markings here, applied elements here. It is still a very, very popular, very, very clear dial, and so much loved. If you take a look at the Alpha, right, firstly, that's a mineral glass, right? It's not Hesalite, it's not sapphire, and it doesn't quite achieve the same contours. You know, I think they've done a fair job, but they didn't quite get the same look as the Hesalite. So it's not quite as good, I think. And if you look at the dial, obviously a lot of it has been copied, but everything that has been different is, you know, I think a detriment. I mean, if you look at the Alpha markings, the red hand somehow just doesn't do it for me, that central second hand. And if you look at the bottom there, it says chronograph above the 6 o'clock dial. That maybe is a bit of a miscue, because that dial is actually a 24-hour dial. So this is just a 30-minute totalizer with the central chronograph hand. That's a small seconds on 9 o'clock. 30-minute chronograph with a 24-hour subdial. So, you know, maybe that's a deliberate miscue. And then importantly, if you look at the chaptering, the Amiga sits slightly inside the edge of the dial. This one, they've gone right to the edge of the dial there. And that's probably because the registers can't go any smaller in terms of closeness to the middle there because of the movement. So they've had to make that fatter or wider, and it doesn't quite do it. Okay, so no doubt, you know, that's something they've tried to go for, but they haven't quite done it. All right, so that's the dial and crystal there. Moving on, bracelet. Well, Omega is the very, you know, well-known, I think, Speedmaster bracelet, isn't it? I mean, quality, solidity, does have 2 positions for micro adjustment, screw links, right, solid end links and whatnot. You know, you've probably known this bracelet and seen a lot of this bracelet already. This one, right, they've tried, but it kind of falls apart. I mean, they do have solid end links, but, you know, it's push pins, right? The fit is really quite bad, right? It really doesn't do it. You know, I've complained about that end link protrusion there. And then, you know, quality overall, well, you know, that pin's broken off, and you can see it's still got that paperclip job. You can see it there, the paperclip job that I did to repair it all those months ago. It's still holding there, but you know, that's what it is. That's a paperclip that I've bent around there, so that's broken off. Really, the overall feel is definitely not up to the watch that costs 20 times more. You know, what do you expect? But you know, that's really no doubt there's a very big difference there in the bracelet. Okay, next up then. Quality. Well, I think there is just absolutely no question, right? I mean, you know, the fit and finish of the Omega is effectively perfect. I think they've gone out to achieve something, and they've hit the mark on all counts. You know, I think you probably wouldn't. You know, how much better can you make this? I think this is close to as good as they want it to be. You know, they've hit the mark there. Whereas this one, right, the finishing, the fineness of the angles, if you look closely, the dial printing, the dial placement, the actual bezel just isn't as sharp. I think the insert and the overall fit of the bracelet, I've mentioned that. Just the edges just isn't quite finished as well. It's very obvious actually when you put it side by side. So this one, the finish is probably below par even for a $200 watch. I think I've seen $200 watches that have, you know, marginally better finishes than this. And then I've mentioned there's a broken pin on the bracelet, so that's kind of like a mark of the quality, I think. So no doubt there is a quality deficit without any shadow of a doubt there. You know, definitely it's a gap between, a gulf, I would say, between these two. All right, moving on to style then. Okay, so the Alpha style is completely copied, right? All the good facets are copied. I think, you know, the overall color layout, the hour markings, the dial style, you know, even the bracelet style, everything that they've kind of gone different is something that falls down. And I think overall the execution is subpar. It really is, it lets itself down because they haven't really carried it out that well. You know, Omega is absolutely well known, and they've kept this very, very similar, almost exactly the same as it has been from the original, for good reason. It's absolutely a classic design that stands up to, you know, style today. So I think, you know, this is, you know, you can argue whether it is the most iconic chronograph of all time, but it is, I think, in anybody's top 5 if you had to choose the most iconic chronograph watches of all time, I think. Okay, so styling wise, you know, I think there is, again, you know, there's no question there is a gap here. Right, performance. Okay, this is another one that comes close-ish because mainly of the caliber, but also because this case, I think, is not bad in terms of solidity. It is, you know, the quality and finishing is subpar, but the solidity is not bad. It does feel pretty solid. It does have a screw-in crown. That crown doesn't feel very refined, hence another knockoff on the quality, right? It doesn't have a very nice feel on the screw-in, but it is a screw-in. So this watch, I think performance-wise, in terms of the case protection and solidity, is not bad. It does fall because it is only a 30-minute chronograph. That's not actually a chronograph at all. That's sub-dial. Whereas the Omega, you know, it's a true 12-hour chronograph that will keep counting even after you go past 12 hours. It kind of resets, and I showed that on my review before. Okay, so the Omega, I think, why do I not give it 10 out of 10? Well, mainly because it hasn't gone for the full water rating, you know, that allows you to submerge it. It is actually a nominal 50-meter water rating. Yes, fine is the Speedmaster for space. You know, you don't need it to be waterproof, but you know, that's what it is here in terms of day-to-day use. You wouldn't take that into a pool or into the ocean by any means. Okay, next up, durability. Well, you know, as I said, very reliable movement. You know, well-known movement, ST19 series movement. You know, it's much loved, I think, amongst Seagull fans. But you know, it is what it is. Right? A solid case, a good movement up against the Omega that withstood NASA intensive testing for the flight certification, how can you compare it, right? I mean, it's got to be 10 out of 10 for the Omega, and it remains, as far as I'm aware, these watches remain flight certified for all space missions. You can see it right there, and I believe that's still the case to this very day. All right, next up, value. Okay, so this one, I think you could disagree and argue a little bit more about this. I've chosen to give it a par. This is the only one that gets a par because column wheel mechanical hand winding chronograph for under $200 is absolutely astounding. Yes, it's not a superb quality package, but you're getting that awesome movement in this package that is an homage. I have to give this a very high mark. I really am astounded at the value of this particular piece here. Okay, so that's really what I've given it. Why does this deserve a 9? Maybe it doesn't, but I think despite the fact that this is more than 20 times the price of the Alpha, it comes with so much behind it, right? It comes with a lot in the packaging. It comes with all the name and the history behind the Moonwatch. I think, in my opinion, the value is pretty darn good for the asking price. A lot of Omegas cost a lot more than this. This, of course, is a bit cheaper because it doesn't have a lot of the modern stuff, including it's not a chronometer, it's not a master movement, meaning it's not a full anti-magnetic movement, it's not a coaxial, it doesn't have a lot of the modern Omega improvements, but I think they've done that deliberately, and part of that makes it cheaper than you otherwise might expect for the arguably the most legendary watch in Omega's collection, the most famous watch. And because of that, I think the value is actually not too bad. Okay, that's my opinion. I think you can argue differently there. And then lastly, brand. Well, Omega needs no introduction. Enough said. Alpha, I have my doubts about it. They seem to be under some legal problems. I linked to domain Alpha Watches before. That actually doesn't exist anymore. It's been disabled. I guess, are they having some legal troubles? Maybe they are. Who knows? No doubt the brand is in question. Clearly, it is a brand that copies a lot of the design elements. So you can't give it a high mark here. So there's a big gulf in branding, of course. All right, so there it is. I'll let you look at the totals. There's no question what the conclusion would have been. It has to go to the Omega. So in summary, Alpha's attempt at homaging the Moonwatch has an excellent Seagull ST19 series column wheel movement. Therefore, it's fantastic value at less than $200. But the resemblance kind of ends there. The weaknesses especially are in the execution of the design. They haven't really copied some of the crucial elements, right? The quality falls down, and of course the brand is not there. Omega is legendary, subjectively deserving of what I think is the highest score ever given by myself. Design and style are subjective, but I think the brand is incontrovertible, and objectively better quality finishing by far. Performance wise, I think you have to give the mark to this, and then durability with all the NASA testing that it gets through. So guys, that's my comparison. This has gone on longer than I expected, but I think the outcome is as expected. Hopefully you agree with me. Let me know what your thoughts are on the Alpha versus Omega comparison. Guys, if you enjoy my videos, do consider subscribing. New content every week, always aiming to be objective and unbiased about all things horology. Thank you again for sticking with me, and as always, I'll catch you guys next time.
And let me play among the stars. Let me see how spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my hand.